Estás entrando en Crónicas de la Oscuridad. En este reino nocturno, las sombras escriben historias prohibidas, relatos tan perturbadores que desafían toda lógica. Cada crónica es un viaje sin retorno hacia lo más profundo y oscuro del alma humana, donde los miedos más íntimos cobran vida y se materializan en terrores indescriptibles. El silencio aquí no es aliado, sino cómplice, susurrando secretos que ningún mortal debería escuchar jamás. Permanece atento, pues las historias que escucharás quedarán tatuadas en tu memoria y acecharán tus sueños durante mucho tiempo después. These aren't the ragged gouges of claws. The scoring etched into my front door is too clean, too deliberate. 12 years I've walked the trails of Whispering Pines Preserve. I know the signature of bear, the frantic splintering. This is different. The grooves sit precisely at the height a tall man might reach. For 3 hours now, the cold weight of my service pistol has rested heavy on my thigh, my mind circling back, obsessively, to what transpired 2 weeks ago near Serenity Falls. I need to set this down, anchor it in ink while the sequence still holds. Perhaps another soul might decipher the warning. It began October 14th, a Tuesday mid-afternoon. A standard trail assessment along the Highland Crest route. Air like chilled cider. The forest floor a rustling carpet of fallen maple leaves, that perfect autumnal crunch underfoot. A path walked countless times, checking blaze marks, scanning for widowmakers or washouts. I just reached the primary overlook when I heard it. The sharp crack of substantial branches snapping, maybe 60 yards back into the dense undergrowth. Nothing alarming in itself. Deer, likely, or perhaps a black bear rooting for late berries. Common encounters. I raised my binoculars, sweeping the tree line. That's when the shape resolved itself. Initially, it registered as ursine, a large black bear reared up on hind legs, immense, easily 7 feet tall, broad across the shoulders. But the configuration felt wrong. An unsettling geometry. Its forelimbs hung too low, impossibly long, fingertips brushing the leaf litter. And its stance wasn't the tentative, investigative posture of a bear. This thing stood rigidly erect, shoulders squared, head fixed forward, like a sentinel cloaked in night. When it moved, taking a hesitant step, a joint below its midsection bent forward, a human articulation grotesquely misplaced. My years in these woods screamed denial. This was no bear. Its head swiveled, an unnervingly fluid motion, toward my position. Distance and the lattice of branches obscured the face, yet I felt the impact of its gaze, a sudden focused awareness. Instinctively, my hand drifted to my holster. A prickle of cold sweat traced my neck. It took another step, bringing one of its lower appendages into clearer view. Not a paw. The digits were too long, too defined, flexing slightly. They looked disturbingly like human fingers, albeit swathed in coarse black fur. My pistol cleared leather. "Hey!" The word tore from my throat, the standard ranger's warning cry. "Get back! Go on!" The creature's reaction defied all animal precedent. No panicked flight, no aggressive growl, no flick of an ear. It merely tilted its head, a slow, considering gesture. Then, impossibly, its mouth stretched. I saw it clearly, lips peeling back from teeth too symmetrical, too white for any denizen of the wild. A human rictus on a face that should not exist. My hand trembled. A warning shot, fired skyward, standard protocol for potentially dangerous wildlife. The report slammed against the trees, echoing down the ridge. The entity remained utterly still. Another step forward, smooth, deliberate. Then another. Its tracks, starkly visible in a patch of damp earth, revealed 5 distinct toe impressions. Humanoid. I fired again, this time into the ground before it. Back off. My voice frayed at the edges. It halted. For a long, breathless moment, we held each other's stare across the intervening space. Then it raised one of those terrible hand-like limbs and pointed directly at me. The gesture was so mundane, so utterly human in its implication, that the gun nearly slipped from my grasp. Finally, it turned, melting back into the deeper forest shadows, not with the hurried retreat of a startled beast, but with the casual stride of something assured of its return. Backup was summoned via radio. Aggressive bear, warning shots fired. What other narrative was possible? 2 colleagues arrived within 20 minutes. We scoured the vicinity, finding only the disturbing footprints, already softening, blurring as groundwater seeped in. That should have marked the end, filed away as a bizarre, unsettling encounter. The kind the wilderness occasionally coughs up, eventually dismissed as tricks of light and shadow. But the disquiet lingered, festered. The following morning I found fresh incisions on an old pine near the station, not claw marks, deliberate carvings forming a pattern, 3 vertical slashes intersected by 2 horizontal bars. I photographed them, but when I returned later with another ranger, the marked section of bark had been violently torn away. 3 evenings later, securing the visitor center at twilight, a peripheral movement snagged my attention in the deserted parking lot. There it stood, between 2 parked vehicles, silhouetted against the fading sky, watching me. Closer this time. Details emerged. The fur wasn't uniform. Patches of matted gray suggested something akin to tattered clothing clinging to its form. The head's shape was wrong for a bear. Too narrow, elongated, set upon a distinct neck. It moved with an unnerving spinal rigidity, like a person walking tall. My hand went to my weapon, but before I could draw, it simply wasn't there. An hour's frantic search with a flashlight yielded nothing, except for the same strange symbol, newly carved into the trailhead information kiosk. The incidents escalated, weaving a pattern of encroaching dread. Fresh symbols appeared on trees each dawn, always the same configuration. Fleeting glimpses became more frequent. A tall, dark figure standing motionless at the tree line, always just beyond clear identification, yet seemingly closer each time. It felt bolder. A week after the initial sighting, a family burst into the station near closing time, faces pale with panic. Setting up their campsite, their 6-year-old daughter had seen something watching from the woods. The father described it haltingly as a man, wearing a really good bear suit. They'd abandoned everything, fleeing the preserve. I investigated their site. The tent stood half erected. Nearby trees bore the familiar carvings, and their cooler, undisturbed by animal force, sat open, not ripped apart, but carefully unlatched. Inside, the food remained untouched, but sorted into neat, inexplicable piles. Sleep became a luxury that night. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle outside jolted me upright. Around 3 a.m., heavy footfalls sounded on my porch. Peering through the window, I saw a dark, upright shape stride past, movements fluid and unnervingly purposeful. Gun and flashlight in hand, I flung the door open to emptiness. But something lay on the welcome mat. One of our standard issue ranger hats, ripped meticulously to shreds. The next morning I laid everything before my supervisor. His skepticism warred with concern. He agreed to consult a wildlife biologist. The expert examined the footprint casts, the photos of the carvings, the ruined hat. His verdict was chillingly ambiguous. Emphatically not bear. Etiology unknown. He'd encountered nothing like it. A sweep was organized. 5 rangers, the 2 biologists, and a grizzled local trapper whose knowledge of these woods was legendary. We combed the sector for 2 days. Nothing. Only more carved symbols, appearing with unnerving regularity. It was the trapper who noticed their placement, forming a precise circle around my cabin, each mark exactly 100 yards from my door. That night, it returned. Not just footsteps, a sound that turned my blood to ice. Knocking. 3 sharp, distinct raps on my front door. Through the peephole, bathed in the yellow glare of the porch light, it stood. The sight was a violation of natural law. Proportions skewed, arms too lengthy, legs too straight beneath the dark covering. The fur seemed wrong up close, hinting at something else beneath, something that shifted oddly. Its face, dear God, the face, was the nadir of the horror. A nightmarish fusion, neither bear nor human, yet borrowing features from both. And it wore pieces of ranger uniform, torn fragments of the standard green shirt and trousers, clinging to its form like grotesque trophies. A mockery. Paralyzed, I watched as it raised one of those monstrous hands and knocked again. Thump, thump, thump. It leaned closer, its breath fogging the peephole glass. Then it spoke. Yes, spoke. The voice was a hideous rasp, like stones grinding together, yet the words formed, clear and cold. "Let me in, Ranger." My fingers scrabbled for my phone, desperate for proof. But the screen remained stubbornly black. I looked back, its face pressed hard against the glass now, 2 luminous, horribly human eyes boring into mine. "I've been watching you," it rasped, "learning from you." I fired through the door. 4 rounds, center mass. The impact slammed into the wood, shaking the entire cabin. 10 agonizing minutes passed before I found the courage to wrench the door open. Gone. No blood, no tracks, nothing but the splintered holes in the wood, and snagged on a shard, a small scrap of green fabric, unmistakably from a ranger's uniform. That was yesterday. I called in unwell today, barricaded inside my cabin. An hour ago, the scratches appeared on my door, precise, deliberate lines forming that same damnable pattern. I hear it now, circling outside. A heavy tread on the packed earth. Every few minutes, the knocking resumes. 3 raps. Always 3. My radio hisses with static, broken by phantom whispers that sometimes coalesce into that rough voice, shaping my name. Elias. My calls to the station go unanswered. The landline just rings endlessly. The sun sinks, painting the pines in bloody hues. Through the window, dark figures detach from the twilight gloom. More than one now. All walking upright. The knocking intensifies. A coordinated rhythm from multiple points around the cabin. Thump, thump, thump. Pause. Thump, thump, thump. And now the voices join, a chorus of grinding stone. Let us in, Elias. We've learned so much. Now it's time for you to learn from us. This script is my testament, my final warning. If you find this, abandon Whispering Pines. If you glimpse something in the woods that walks too straight, moves too smoothly, looks like a bear but feels utterly wrong, don't linger. Run. They are louder now, the knocking, the chorus. My pistol is loaded, but some deep certainty tells me lead won't stop what they've become. They learned from us, twisted our image into something new. And now, they intend to impart their own terrible lesson. I suspect this is my last night as Elias Vance. Perhaps my last night as human. The moment my weight settled onto the worn train seat, my eyes found him. Beyond the window's grime-streaked glass, A figure kept pace with the accelerating carriage, his gaze fixed on mine as if the barrier between us was nothing but air. This compartment swam in dim, uncertain light, nearly deserted save for the rhythmic percussion of wheels on steel rails filling the void. A cold knot tightened low in my belly. Outside was impossible terrain, a blur of night where no one should be. Certainly not someone mirroring our velocity. How could he run or float alongside us? Dampness bloomed on my palms. I scrubbed them against the rough denim of my jeans. Leaning in, I squinted past my own reflection, searching for a phantom platform, a maintenance walkway, anything. Only the deep smear of darkness rushed by, and against it the man remained, an unwavering silhouette. His attire spoke of another time, crafted from fabric that looked heavy, cumbersome, like a greatcoat plucked from a history book. Upon his chest gleamed something metallic, an emblem perhaps, or a medallion. Its configuration was alien, a complex interweaving that resonated with no symbol I knew. My own chest constricted, heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. For a long moment, stillness held me captive. I stared. He stared back. No flicker of confusion crossed his features, only an unnerving patience, as though awaiting my next move. A violent rattle from the carriage jolted me. My gaze darted forward. Two other souls shared this space, slumped near the front, heads bowed in sleep or feigned rest, utterly oblivious. Back to the window. He persisted. Though the train devoured the landscape, his form neither dwindled nor receded, remaining perfectly framed, perfectly aligned with me. His scrutiny felt like a physical weight, a spotlight pinning me, nowhere to hide. My shoulders drew up towards my ears. My throat felt scraped raw. Action became necessity. This proximity, this direct line of sight, was unbearable. Slinging my backpack over one shoulder, I rose and navigated the aisle, choosing a seat several rows ahead. The exhalation that escaped me as I sank down was ragged, loud in the relative quiet. A quick scan confirmed the others remained undisturbed. A wan overhead bulb flickered erratically, ignored. Steeling myself, I forced my gaze towards the window beside my new seat. At first, only the streaking void met my eyes. Then, abruptly, he materialized. Outside this window now, his stare just as intense, the bizarre device still affixed to his chest. A tremor started in my hands, my heart hammering anew. I pressed my palms flat against the textured seat covering, seeking anchor in the mundane feel of worn fabric beneath my fingertips. A blink, a hard shake of my head. Perhaps fatigue painted phantoms onto the glass. But no. The same archaic coat, the same unwavering countenance. He didn't blink, just held me in that relentless gaze. Unsteadily, I pushed to my feet again, legs feeling like poorly jointed wood. Retreating to the car's rearmost section seemed the only option. Quiet abandoned, I simply moved, desperate for distance. The instant I claimed the back seat, a low vibration hummed through the frame. The train clattered over a switch point, accompanied by a dull thud from somewhere above. And then, inevitably, my eyes were drawn windowward. He was there. Outside the window, behind me, still watching. It breached some internal dam. Bile rose in my throat. I surged up and stumbled towards the connecting door at the car's end. Cold metal met my grasp. Through the door's rectangular window, I saw him gliding parallel to the train's flank, a spectral passenger on the exterior. Fleeting station lights illuminated his outline against the rushing dark. Enough. The next stop, whatever its name or destination, would be mine. Off this accursed train, away from that face, that stare. My breath came short, my shirt clinging damply to my back. I pushed through into the connecting passage and entered the next carriage, hoping for more people, a conductor, anyone. Emptiness greeted me. Rows of dark blue seats, aged and unwelcoming, stretched before me under lights that pulsed in a slow, nauseating rhythm. My footsteps clanged against the metal floor. Choosing a seat near the center, I sank into it, consciously trying to regulate my breathing, straining to hear any sound beyond the train's drone. Silence. After a minute that stretched thin as wire, I risked a glance outside. He was there, right there, keeping pace effortlessly. My jaw clenched. A morbid curiosity warred with terror. I needed a clearer view. Pressing my face towards the glass until my breath fogged it, I saw him, perhaps only a foot away. No visible effort propelled him. He simply slid through the night. His eyes locked onto mine, and a chill traced its way up my spine. The emblem on his chest resolved slightly. An engraved plate, etched with intricate lines and shapes that refused to form any recognizable pattern. Recoiling, I resolved to find the conductor. I stood, moving cautiously down the aisle, fingers brushing the tops of seats, legs stiff with tension. The door to the subsequent car slid open with a pneumatic hiss, admitting a brief rush of wind as I stepped onto the rattling metal walkway between carriages. This car held a sparse scattering of passengers, 3, maybe 4 individuals, isolated from each other, hunched low, some with hats obscuring their faces. Summoning a shred of courage, I approached a tall man in a brown jacket, tapping his shoulder. He turned, bleary-eyed. Clearing my throat, I asked, my voice thin, if he'd seen anything unusual outside the windows. A frown, a shake of his head, a mumbled plea to be left alone as he shifted pointedly away. The woman in the next occupied seat didn't even open her eyes, just waved a dismissive hand. Panic prickled beneath my skin, my pulse a frantic drum. I hurried towards the front, searching for authority, for uniform. Finding none, I collapsed into an empty seat near the forward door, breath ragged. Minutes later, a change in rhythm. The train began to decelerate. The high squeal of brakes bit the air, followed by a subtle lurch. Station lights bled through the windows. The sign proclaiming the stop's name was an illegible blur, but a platform materialized, starkly empty save for a few benches. My plan solidified. Disembark, summon a ride, escape. The instant the train hissed to a halt, I was on my feet, moving towards the door as it slid open. A few passengers disembarked ahead of me. I stepped forward, reaching the threshold, and the door slid shut, fast and final. I jabbed the open button. Nothing. I threw my shoulder against it, yanked at the seam, immovable, locked. Then, the lurch of departure. My heart hammered against my ribs. Pressing my palm flat against the cool glass of the door, I watched the platform recede, the lights shrinking until darkness reclaimed the view. A shaky breath escaped me as I turned back to the car's interior. Confusion buzzed in my head. Why wouldn't it open? I was right there. A metallic scraping sound drew my attention to the side window. Him again, gliding alongside. I squeezed my eyes shut. A brief, futile negation, then opened them. He remained drifting. My throat tightened, breath catching shallowly in my chest. My limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. Calm down. Find someone official. I navigated towards the very front of the car, locating a small door marked crew only. I knocked. Silence. Knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. The handle turned uselessly in my grip. Locked. The overhead speaker crackled to life, emitting only harsh static before falling silent once more. Trapped. The train surged onward through the night. My phone predictably displayed no signal bars. Turning, I checked the window again. He was there. As we passed beneath another brief splash of station light, the symbol on his chest seemed to possess a faint internal luminescence. A shiver traced the length of my spine. Defeated for the moment, I retreated to a seat, resting my hands on my knees, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. The few remaining passengers seemed utterly engrossed in their own worlds. A rustling newspaper, the glow of a phone screen, oblivious to my plight or to the impossible presence outside. Tension radiated from my shoulders, knotting the muscles, and a dull ache began to throb behind my eyes. The next station offered another chance, another failure. I leaped up, rushing the door as we slowed. Others exited without issue, but for me the door remained sealed, refusing even to crack open. I pounded on the glass, a desperate, futile gesture. No one on the platform looked back as they walked away into the station's dim light. The train pulled out, leaving me staggering back, heat flushing my face. Back in my seat, breathing rapidly, hands trembling. He was keeping me here. My stomach churned. It didn't matter which side I sat on. He was always there. I moved deliberately to the last row, choosing a window that faced the opposite direction from his usual post. He appeared there too, clothes rippling slightly in the unseen wind. The train's monotonous roar filled my ears. My eyes burned from lack of blinking. Catching my reflection, I saw a pale, wide-eyed stranger staring back. Behind that reflection, the figure's expression remained fixed, immutable. He held that strange emblem aloft, almost presenting it. He drew it closer to the glass. I leaned in. A piece of dark metal intricately scored with lines. Letters, runes, abstract markings. My mind felt frayed, unable to process. Time lost its meaning. I drifted between cars, a prisoner pacing her cell, drawn to the windows against my will, hoping he'd vanish, yet compelled to track his presence. An attempt to engage an older man in conversation was met with a curt dismissal and advice to sit down and stop acting strange. The overhead lights flickered with increasing frequency now, casting strobing shadows. A cold draft snaked through the carriage from an unknown source. Then another station announcement, the voice distorted, but the name audible. Hope, stubborn and foolish, flared again. I positioned myself by the door, fists clenched, ready. The moment the brakes groaned, I slammed the button. The door yielded, opening perhaps an inch, enough to glimpse the platform, a solitary bench, before snapping shut again. I mashed the button repeatedly. Nothing. Stepping back, I kicked the door, the sound echoing sharply in the near-empty car. A couple of heads turned briefly, then dismissed me. A raw feeling scraped my throat. I paced before the sealed exit until the train began to move once more, my legs trembling beneath me. I couldn't ignore him. He was always there. Each sight of him sent a fresh tremor through me. My back was slick with sweat. Slumping into a random seat, I let my head fall back against the headrest, closing my eyes, seeking momentary oblivion, but his presence felt tangible, a pressure against the side of the train, even unseen. When I opened my eyes, he was there, gaze seemingly more intense than ever. "What do you want?" I whispered, the words barely audible above the train's drone. My eyes snagged on the symbol again. He pressed it flat against the window pane, deliberately displaying it. Squinting, I tried to decipher the etched lines. They seemed to flow, suggesting pathways perhaps, or instructions rendered in an unknown language. A strange, involuntary impulse moved through me. My arm lifted, my fingers reaching out, drawn towards the cold glass. As my fingertips made contact, he mirrored the gesture from the other side. No transference of heat or pressure, just the chill barrier between us. We remained like that for several heartbeats. My pulse, though still elevated, steadied marginally. Then, as if a point had been made, he retracted his hand, his form sliding away from the window. A sudden gust buffeted the train, momentarily obscuring my view. My stomach clenched again. Rising, hoping he was gone, I stepped into the aisle, gripping seatbacks for balance. Then I saw him, reappeared at the next window down, moving steadily along the exterior towards the front of the train. A part of me screamed to stay put, to cower in the seat, but my feet obeyed a different imperative. I followed him down the aisle, a numb tingling spreading through my legs. Entering the windy, clattering space between cars, my ears popped. Through the connecting door's window, I saw him paused outside the next car, waiting. I slid the door open and stepped through. This carriage was utterly deserted, the seats vacant specters in the gloomiest light yet. A low electronic hum emanated from overhead. As I walked halfway down the aisle, a harsh metallic screech erupted from outside, the sound of metal dragging against metal. Peering out, I saw him pressing the edge of his cymbal against the train's metal skin. Tiny sparks showered into the darkness. He glanced at me even as he continued his task, seemingly carving something into the exterior. My teeth ground together, my hands shaking uselessly at my sides. What was he doing? How could I stop it? Pressing my forehead to the cool glass, I could make out fresh lines scored into the train's body, mirroring the pattern on his emblem. He lifted his head, meeting my eyes directly. A fresh wave of cold washed over me. The train lurched violently, throwing me off balance. I grabbed a seat arm to steady myself. When I looked back, he was already moving onward, gliding towards the next window, continuing his strange inscription. I followed. My footfalls echoed heavily. My throat was parchment dry. Fragmented thoughts of action, break a window, pull the emergency brake, flickered and died, my body leaden, my mind fractured. I simply trailed him as he led me, car by car. At each station stop, the same agonizing ritual played out. The brief hope, the rush to the door, the unyielding barrier closing me in while others passed through freely. Jamming the button, wrestling the handle, fumbling for a manual release, all futile. Then the inexorable movement of the train pulling away once more. Finally, I arrived in the foremost passenger car. A few seats, and beyond them, the presumed door to the operator's cabin. Locked, of course. Through the wide front window, only the dark ribbon of track stretching into infinity was visible. No sign of the figure there. Then I turned, scanning the side windows. And there he was, hovering near the front of the car, close to where an exterior walkway might grant access to the driver's compartment. He raised his hand, pressing the symbol to the glass one final time. I watched, transfixed. The urge to scream, to cry for help, felt lodged deep in my throat, useless in this isolation. He lowered the emblem. And then, for the first time, I saw his lips move, shaping silent words. Inside the train, only the steady mechanical hum and the whisper of wheels persisted. But I saw the articulation, felt the ghost of a message. Stay. My breathing slowed, became strangely even. My heart still pounded, but a peculiar calm settled in my chest, the calm of inevitability. Choice seemed a distant memory. The train sped on. Stations became meaningless blurs of light. The last few passengers disembarked at unseen stops, leaving me utterly alone in the front car. The speaker system fell silent. The cabin door remained locked. My phone remained inert. I took a seat near the window and simply watched him. He watched back. His face was a mask, devoid of anger, fear, or any recognizable emotion. I searched his eyes for a clue, a hint of purpose. Uncertainty coiled in my gut, but I remained seated, feeling the constant vibration of the tracks, the tremble of the seat beneath me. The remainder of the journey unfolded in this tense, suspended rhythm. Each deceleration brought a flicker of hope, a Pavlovian surge towards the door, followed by the familiar, crushing denial. Each time he was there, ensuring my captivity. My body ached from the sustained tension, the constant jolts. My throat burned. Hours bled together. I stared out at the featureless landscape rushing past, listened to the train's mechanical sighs. A subtle shift in the lighting, a flicker, a dimming suggested failing power. Then, the train began to slow once more. Not for a station this time. We rolled into an unlit expanse of track, utterly devoid of landmarks. The train coasted to a complete stop. I stood, peering through the front window into absolute blackness. Turning to the side window, I found him still there, impossibly close. I tried the door. Locked. I reached for the emergency lever. It refused to yield, solid as welded steel. My arms trembled with the effort. Looking back at him, I saw his hand resting on the exterior door handle, holding it fast. The lights flickered again, the engine's low hum dying away completely. Interior lights remained, but cast a weak, sickly glow. The air grew heavy, stale. Pressing my ear to the operator's cabin door yielded only silence. My knock echoed unanswered. My own reflection stared back from the dark glass, pale, exhausted, haunted. I turned back to the figure. He hovered, waiting. Gripping the seat beside me for support, my legs shaky, I forced myself to take slow, deliberate breaths. "Why are you here?" The question emerged as a ragged whisper, expecting no reply. None came. But he didn't leave. He pressed the symbol against the glass again, insistently. I leaned forward, scrutinizing the intricate lines. A map? Instructions? My head pounded. Closing my eyes for a brief second, I opened them to find him unchanged. The train was utterly silent now, save for the faint electrical buzz from the dying lights. A final hiss from the brakes, then absolute stillness descended. The realization settled, cold and heavy. I was stranded. And somehow he required my acceptance of this fact. I sank back into the seat, unsure what else remained to be done, every muscle taut, suspended in the waiting dark. This is my reality now. Sitting here. The figure an unwavering presence just beyond the glass, illuminated by the feeble light. He hasn't faded, hasn't altered. He waits, and I remain. No clue when movement will resume, or if these doors will ever grant release. I only know I cannot leave until this inexplicable ordeal concludes. And I know he will remain, his gaze locked on mine, until I comprehend. How long my composure will hold, I cannot say. There is no choice left. This train, this silent watcher, they are the entirety of my world now. And until it ends, I am trapped here, staring back into the void. Three nights passed, sleep fractured like dropped glass. A jolt, a hammering heart, then the sound. An aberrant noise emanating from my home office door, deep in the nocturnal quiet. Dismissed initially as the phantom architecture of a dream, morning light revealed damning evidence, gouges marring the wood around the handle, raw and splintered, as though something had clawed desperately to gain entry while I slept. This was the first undeniable tremor signaling the wrongness that had infiltrated my house. I am Elias Thorne, 39 years navigating this world, currently in solitude. This residence became mine some 6 months prior, chosen for its capacity to house the sprawling tendrils of my research. My profession lies in the shadowed corners of archives, resurrecting obscure histories and forgotten details for discerning private clientele. The house itself presented no overt peculiarities upon first inspection. The rent was reasonable, the configuration amenable. An upstairs chamber, compact yet sufficient, transformed into my sanctuary of study. Desk, computer, utilitarian filing cabinets, shelves burdened with reference texts. An aesthetic of stark functionality prevails. I eschew ornamentation, favoring meticulous order. The initial weeks unfolded in unremarkable rhythm. Days dissolved into the meticulous sifting of digital ether and time-worn paper, pursuing elusive threads of information for those who compensated my diligence. Nocturnal hours sometimes claimed me, yet I remained tethered to the necessity of at least 6 hours repose. My carefully calibrated schedule, though occasionally strained by demanding projects, adhered to a predictable cadence. That equilibrium shattered roughly a month ago, heralded by unsettling phenomena. The scarred door was merely the prologue. One dawn, I entered my office to find a diaspora of documents across the floorboards, disturbed, violated. Certain papers had vanished entirely, only to resurface incongruously in the living room, discovered near the sofa's indifferent bulk. I retrieved them, grappling with the absence of memory. No recollection of transporting them downstairs. Fatigue, I reasoned initially, a lapse in my usually rigorous self-discipline. Yet the more I interrogated my memory, the more the explanation felt hollow. Disarray is alien to my methods. My system, built on precision, forbids such careless misplacement of crucial files. The subsequent day delivered another disquieting tableau. A heavy reference volume lay open upon my desk, its pages parted to a section unvisited for years. It concerned arcane methodologies, research pathways deemed obsolete or dangerous. A single consultation, long past, was my only interaction with it. To find it now, gaping at a chapter detailing proscribed medical inquiries, seeded a profound unease. The text spoke of antiquated procedures, practices condemned and buried by authorities. No immediate relevance to my current work presented itself. I snapped the book shut, restoring it to its shelf, yet unable to dispel the insistent notion that its presentation was deliberate, a directed message. Prudence dictated locking the office door. A nightly ritual commenced. Turn the key, test the handle, twice. Nevertheless, morning invariably found the door subtly compromised, eased open by perhaps an inch, a definitive breach of its secured state. Inside, books would have migrated along the shelves. Documents performed their spectral vanishing act, reappearing in disparate corners of the house. The immediate suspicion, intrusion, found no purchase. Save for the initial scratches, no sign of forced entry existed anywhere. Valuables remained untouched. My wallet undisturbed on the kitchen counter. The television screen blank and unmolested. A locksmith was summoned, the old lock yielding to a newer, presumably more robust mechanism. A fragile sense of security settled, only to be ripped away that very night. Around 2 in the morning, a dull concussion echoed from the hallway. I slid from bed, limbs betraying a tremor, mouth instantly arid. Flashlight, my bedside sentinel, gripped tight. Easing my bedroom door open revealed the corridor steeped in dimness, punctuated only by the weak glow of a customary nightlight. Near the office door, a presence, a shape, a human contour carved from shadow. Details remained elusive, merely a dark silhouette against the gloom. I froze, breath catching, a cold sweat prickling my brow. An attempt at silent movement was betrayed by a groaning floorboard. The silhouette's head pivoted. A low, indistinct murmuring reached me, syllables blurring into incomprehensible sound. I raised the flashlight's beam. Who's there? My voice thin in the charged air. Silence answered. The figure remained, static, a sentinel of the uncanny. My heart hammered against my ribs. Retreat, call the authorities. Reason screamed, yet an invisible tether held me fast. Inch by cautious inch I advanced. Then the figure retreated, not walking but gliding, an incorporeal drift backward. As it passed the nightlight's feeble radius, I caught a fleeting impression of a face, pallid, almost translucent, before it vanished around the corner. I lunged down the hall. Emptiness. The front door stood steadfastly locked. Windows remained secured. A chill traced patterns on my arms, the hairs on my nape prickling. Returning to the office door, I found it locked, just as I had left it. But new smudges stained the area around the handle. Greasy, finger-like impressions. My keys rested heavy in my pocket. The means by which the door could have been manipulated remained utterly opaque. Back in the bedroom, I banished the shadows with every available light, struggling to regain composure. Morning revealed renewed chaos upon my desk. Pages detailing archaic experiments lay scattered, referencing procedures that flagrantly defied ethical boundaries. Such materials were foreign to my usual research parameters: genealogical traces, historical footnotes, nothing venturing into forbidden territories. These documents, I realized with dawning recognition, originated from a forgotten repository. A box of effects left by a previous occupant, discovered months ago in the attic. It contained a jumble of data concerning medical trials, unsanctioned techniques, dismissed at the time as irrelevant detritus and consigned to a filing cabinet. I resurrected the container. Within lay notes hinting at clandestine experimentation, much of it fragmented, nascent concepts for profoundly strange research. The author remained obscure, the signature a spectral scroll. Dr. A. Finch, perhaps, the letters eroded by time. The deeper I delved, the clearer the picture became. This prior resident had waded deep into the murky waters of unethical science. Phrases surfaced: prolonged consciousness, post-life continuity, vague yet deeply unsettling. A powerful urge to incinerate the entire collection warred with a morbid curiosity. A need to understand if these decaying papers held the key to the disturbances plaguing my office. For the moment, I set them aside. Sleep offered no sanctuary that night. The silhouette by the office door replayed behind my eyelids, accompanied by the phantom echo of its low murmuring. I left my bedroom door ajar. A silent invitation, a desperate need to witness. Around 3, a whisper, faint yet distinct, slithered through the silence. Archives. Must finish. My heart leaped. Blanket discarded, flashlight seized, bare feet cold against the floorboards, I stepped into the hallway. The silhouette stood there again, nearer this time, closer to my own threshold. It resolved slightly, the shape of a man, a faint suggestion of a coat. Eyes remained voids, but the outline of a face was discernible. It turned toward the office door, one hand extending, tracing the wood grain. Then came the sound, a skeletal rasp, fingernails scraping across the surface. I tried to shout, to command it to leave, but only a strangled gasp emerged. Its attention shifted to me, mouth moving, emitting only garbled static. "Get out of my house," I managed, voice thin. It seemed to tilt its head, a gesture less of understanding than of detached curiosity. Then the repetition. "Archives. Old records." A step forward on my part prompted its retreat, a fading dissolution down the stairwell. I pursued, heart pounding, but reached the landing to find only stillness. Living room, kitchen, every portal, every lock, secure. My body hummed with tension, throat parched, a fine tremor running through me. Water offered little solace. I remained in the living room armchair until dawn painted the windows gray, adrift in certainty. I was contending with something beyond the pale of normal explanation. Under dawn's sterile light, I returned to the box, scrutinizing its contents with renewed intensity. Chilling phrases leaped forth. Activation of old facilities, location-based attachments, continuation beyond the living. A hypothesis began to form. Perhaps the author of these notes, this researcher, had met his end before completing his dubious work. Perhaps some fragment, some psychic residue remained tethered to this place, to these documents. Ghosts? The notion felt absurd. Yet it was the sole explanation that accommodated the bizarre ballet in my office, the migrating books, the teleporting documents, as if an unseen hand sought to resume the interrupted labor. Answers demanded pursuit. A visit to the local records office unearthed the property's history. A man named Alistair Finch had resided here roughly 2 decades prior. A researcher affiliated with the private facility shuttered amidst scandal over unethical practices. Official records painted Finch's fate with ambiguity, vanished under suspicious circumstances. Whispers circulated. Flight, assumed identity, even death within these very walls. The paper trail dissolved into conjecture. That evening, I resolved to keep vigil. Office door locked as usual, lights extinguished, I positioned myself on a small stool in the shadowed corridor. Around 1:30 a.m., the rattling began. The handle clicked, agitated. My chest constricted. Adrenaline surged. Flashlight beam stabbed the darkness, illuminating the silhouette, crouched now before the door, straining against it. It turned toward me, then straightened. In the focused light, details sharpened. Hollow cheeks carving shadows on a long face, eyes like dark pools, attire suggesting a bygone era. Its lips moved, forming words I perceived more than heard. I need the files. The pronouncement seemed direct, despite its near silence. A draft, unnaturally cold, whispered past. I stood my ground. "Stop messing with my work," I commanded, my voice betraying a tremor. The figure remained motionless for a beat, then extended a hand toward the solid oak door. Impossibly, the hand passed through the wood. A distinct click echoed, the sound of the lock disengaging. The door swung inward of its own accord. My breath hitched. Rising, I swept the flashlight beam into the office. A vortex of paper erupted, sheets lifting from shelves, fluttering down like wounded birds. The silhouette stepped across the threshold, its attention fixed on the scattered documents, fingers rifling through them with frantic purpose. Suddenly it spun toward me, emitting a cry, not loud but possessing a psychic weight that pressed upon my ears. The words remained indecipherable, yet the fury was palpable. My flashlight beam wavered. My legs turned to lead. A primal urge to intervene warred with an immobilizing terror. Then, silence descended. The figure surveyed the chaotic spread on the floor, taking measured steps, examining pages. Fragmentary phrases punctuated the quiet. Final steps. Incomplete. Must finish. Heart pounding a frantic rhythm, I forced slow, deliberate breaths, desperate not to betray my fear. "What do you want?" The question hung in the air. It turned, expression vacant, unreadable. Then, with startling abruptness, it rushed past me, a blur disappearing back into the hallway. The office door slammed shut behind it. Footsteps receded down the stairs. Following, I found only absence. After that night's violation, the path seemed clear. Confront the catalyst. I spread Finch's research across my desk, immersing myself in its disturbing narrative. More references to unauthorized experiments, typed and handwritten notes detailing a relentless drive to continue trials regardless of cost, instructions for esoteric instruments, vague allusions to subterranean laboratories. A wave of anxiety washed over me. This, I sensed, was the locus of the haunting. These brittle pages, this unfinished, unholy work. The figure was trapped, an echo bound to its own obsessive ambition. I gathered the notes, consolidating them into a single, perilous archive. The impulse to burn them was strong, yet tempered by a fear of unknown consequences, of potentially exacerbating the situation. Instead, I stacked them meticulously within their box and consigned it to the darkness of my closet. The subsequent nights offered a fragile truce. Occasional faint shuffles still whispered from the hallway, but the silhouette remained unseen. The office door held fast against the morning light. My books maintained their positions. This illusory peace, however, proved ephemeral. A week later, the summons came again, piercing the pre-dawn stillness around 2. The voice, insistent, "Bring me the files," repeated twice. Sitting on my bed's edge, shoulders rigid, I knew compliance was the only course. I retrieved the box from the closet, carried its unsettling weight downstairs to the living room, and placed it upon the coffee table. "Here," I announced to the empty room, voice tight, hands clammy. "Here are the files you want." The air grew frigid. A door down the hall creaked ominously. A faint shimmer flickered at the periphery of my vision, a distortion by the far wall. Placing a hand flat atop the box, I repeated, "Take them." What happened next was subtle yet profound. The papers within the box stirred, shifted, as if brushed by an invisible hand, scattering briefly across the table's surface before settling with uncanny precision back into the container. The oppressive chill in the air dissipated. Turning, I saw it, the silhouette standing near the window. It raised a hand, a gesture ambiguous. Acknowledgement? Farewell? Then slowly faded, dissolving into the mundane fabric of the room. I stared at the empty space by the window, caught between profound relief and residual terror. My decision was swift. I gathered the box, carried it out into the night, and locked it securely within the trunk of my car. The plan solidified. Tomorrow, a storage facility, a final exile for these haunted documents. Perhaps removing the catalyst from the house itself would sever the connection, appease the lingering presence, allow its energy, or whatever it was, to finally move on. That is the current state of affairs. Several days have passed in watchful quiet. The silhouette has not reappeared. The office door bears no fresh wounds. Books remain static. Documents stay put. Yet an undercurrent of unease persists, a tension coiled deep within me. Relaxation remains elusive. Randomly, my gaze drifts to the hallway, half expecting the shadow to coalesce once more. Thus far, only silence answers. Perhaps Finch is satisfied with the relocation of his legacy. Or perhaps his search continues elsewhere, for something more elusive. The answers remain beyond my grasp. All I know is the knot of anxiety in my chest has loosened, allowing me to resume my work, uninterrupted. But the memory remains indelible. The silhouette, the murmuring, the relentless scratching at the door. My lease expires in due course. I will not renew it. Remaining here long-term feels untenable, sharing space with the psychic scar of those experiments. Whether Dr. Alastair Finch truly died within these walls or simply vanished into the world, his unquiet presence lingered long enough to unravel weeks of my life. Perhaps I will never encounter his spectral form again. For now, the ability to sleep through the night, undisturbed by whispers and the phantom scrape of fingernails seeking entry, is a fragile solace. It is ultimately all I desire, to feel, once more, truly alone in my own home. That initial night, the memory remains sharp. Elias found himself nestled in his second-floor bedroom within the sprawling townhouse he shared, the glow of his laptop screen painting his face in the dimness. He lived there alongside Reese, Maya, and Ben. Each claimed a private room, converging only in the communal spaces downstairs. The house, possessed of 2 stories and the attendant size of age, was where he first registered those tentative raps. He dismissed them initially, the groaning symphony of old plumbing perhaps, or some stray resonance from the street beyond. Snapping the laptop shut, Elias yawned, courting sleep, but the knocking persisted. A quiet, rhythmic insistence against the wood that seeded a nascent unease within him. Dawn broke, and Elias confronted the closet, a relic built into the wall, its heavy timber doors exuding a faint, musty scent. He ran his hands over the solid wood, peered into the shadowed interior. No fissures marred the surface. No telltale signs of rodents or burrowing insects offered easy explanation. He rapped his knuckles against the sides, listening for the scurry of displaced vermin. But only silence answered. His gaze fell upon a small box housing documents on the shelf, a pair of forgotten suitcases resting beneath. All appeared undisturbed. With a shrug that didn't quite settle his nerves, he retrieved his clothes and surrendered to the day's routine, leaving the house and its nocturnal whispers behind for work. For a time, the intrusions were mere whispers, phantom taps easily lost amidst the groans of the aging structure, particularly late at night, seeming to emanate from the closet's depths. Elias clung to the explanation of pipes laboring behind plaster. Theirs was a house steeped in years. Specific stair treads whined underfoot. Floorboards lamented the wind's passage. Worry felt like an overreaction. Life with Reese, Maya, and Ben unfolded downstairs, punctuated by shared pizzas, cheap beer, and flickering television screens. Maya once ventured, "Hear anything odd at night, Elias?" But he demurred, suggesting it was likely just the house settling into its bones. Nothing truly strange. Weeks bled into one another, however, and the sounds shed their ambiguity. They gained intention. Lying on the cusp of sleep, Elias would be jolted by a rapid tattoo. 3 or 4 distinct raps, like knuckles striking wood, light yet deliberate. He'd hold his breath, straining to listen in the ensuing stillness. Silence would reclaim the room, his pulse would gradually slow, and he'd murmur reassurances to himself about the house's eccentricities. Sleep fractured near 3 one morning. He surfaced into awareness without cause, the room steeped in quiet save for the oscillating fan's low hum. Then a dense thud resonated from within the closet's confines. It possessed a weight the earlier tapping lacked. Elias froze, his gaze locked onto the inert closet door, tension seizing the muscles along his spine. His eyes darted to the handle, unmoving. He fought for calm. Something fell, he reasoned. A box shifted on the shelf. Yet the following morning's inspection revealed nothing amiss, each item precisely where he remembered it. The inevitable currents of life soon pulled his housemates away. Reese and Maya sought the intimacy of a smaller apartment. Ben chased a career opportunity in a distant city. Their disparate schedules had already rendered the large townhouse cavernous. Elias, however, clung to the familiar space, seduced by the favorable rent negotiated with the landlord. He didn't object to the echoing rooms, valued the proximity to his job, and entertained notions of solitary peace, unaware of how the silence would soon amplify the intrusion. That perception shifted dramatically once the knocking intensified. Solitude descended upon the townhouse, vast and echoing. Nights stretched thin. Elias would linger downstairs, the television casting pallid light across the living room. Yet an insistent urge to peer around corners, to check the shadowed spaces, became his companion. He conserved electricity, leaving the kitchen shrouded in darkness. The hallway leading to the upper floor acquired a peculiar charge after sundown. He'd slap the light switch before ascending, each footfall on the creaking treads sounding unnaturally loud, the house seeming to exhale around him. The closet's faint communications continued sporadically. Barely a week into his solitary tenure, insomnia claimed him. Thoughts of work deadlines and unresolved personal matters churned relentlessly. He lay staring at the ceiling, the air thick and stagnant despite the fan's efforts, and an open window admitting the humid summer night. No air conditioning offered respite. Then, piercing the 2 a.m. stillness, came the sound. A soft, rhythmic percussion from the closet. Slow, steady, as if someone were gently trying to capture his attention. A jolt, visceral and cold, shot through Elias. His stomach clenched. His throat felt parched. He willed himself to ignore it, but the taps grew firmer, more purposeful. He pushed himself upright, the sheets clinging damply to his skin. The thought of switching on a lamp flickered, but instead, he slipped silently from the bed. The floorboards gave a slight groan beneath his weight. Pressing his ear flat against the closet's wooden door, he held his breath. Faintly, unmistakably, he heard it again. Right on the other side, a delicate rapping like knuckles yet impossibly soft. His hand, slick with sweat, closed around the brass knob. A tremor ran through his fingers. He turned it with deliberate slowness. As the hinge groaned, an unnatural chill spilled forth, brushing against his face like refrigerated air, impossible in this unconditioned house. It made him recoil instinctively. His eyes swept the interior darkness. Fumbling for his phone, he activated its flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom. It illuminated the shelves, the suitcases, the undisturbed box of documents. No movement. He waved a hand tentatively inside, searching for the source of the draft. But the sensation was fleeting, inconsistent. Within moments, the cold dissipated, replaced by the familiar muggy warmth. Elias retreated, pulling the door shut, and sank onto the edge of his bed, heart hammering against his ribs. He rubbed his hands on his knees, a futile attempt to dispel the tremor. Sleep was lost to him. He watched the closet door until the harsh summons of his 6 a.m. alarm. He rose, showered, attempting to wash away the night's pervasive strangeness. Subsequent days offered a deceptive calm, yet the phantom cold clung to his thoughts. Elias found himself frequently glancing towards the closet upon entering his room. The memory nagged. He traced the closet seams again, rapping on plasterboard walls in the room and the adjacent hallway, seeking a vent, a gap, any logical source for the draft. Everything felt solid, sealed. A colleague met his hesitant account with a shrug. "Old houses, man," he'd said dismissively. "Weird drafts happen." No one shared his unease. Later that week, absorbed in the flickering light of his laptop downstairs, Elias heard it again. A distinct rapping from the upper floor. Not thunderous, but clear. 4 or 5 knocks, a breath of silence, then another sequence. His stomach twisted. Lowering the laptop's volume, he listened intently. The pattern repeated. He rose, abandoning the relative sanctuary of the living room, and mounted the creaking stairs, pulse hammering, a sheen of perspiration gathering on his forehead. The hallway light blazed, illuminating his open bedroom door. He crossed the threshold. Silence. The closet door stood closed, exactly as he'd left it. He approached it, his hand hovering over the knob. A moment of internal debate. Did he truly want to breach that threshold again? His palm felt clammy, his breathing shallow. Turning the knob, he swung the door open. The familiar musty odor met his nostrils, but no anomalous cold accompanied it. Just stagnant, dark air. Phone flashlight engaged, he scanned the interior once more. Shelf, undisturbed, documents, untouched, suitcases, inanimate. He tapped the back panel experimentally. Nothing. He listened, straining against the silence. Only the frantic thrum of his own blood in his ears answered. Closing the door felt like sealing away something unresolved. His hands shook slightly. Tension knotted his neck. He returned downstairs, but the show held no more interest. Every creak of the house set him on edge. 2 weeks dissolved under a cloud of weary vigilance. The nightly cadence of knocks became an unwelcome fixture in his solitary existence. Sometimes brief, almost apologetic. Other times a persistent rapping that stretched for a minute or more. He'd lie awake, eyes fixed on the unmoving closet door, his imagination conjuring unseen occupants. He tried not to feed the fear. Accessing the closet became a snatched, hurried affair. Grab clothes, shut door, retreat. He began migrating belongings to the hallway closet, creating distance. Resolved to banish the mystery, Elias dedicated an afternoon to dissection. He emptied the closet's meager contents, placing the document box on his bed, hauling the heavy suitcases out into the room. He unzipped them, confirming their emptiness save for brittle papers and faded receipts. With the space cleared, he began a systematic examination of the interior panels, tapping, probing for hollow spots or loose boards. The wood, though aged, felt uniformly solid. No holes, no nests, no sign of infestation. Armed with a screwdriver, he tested the rear panel, attempting to pry a corner loose to glimpse whatever lay behind. Ancient, rusted nails held fast. The panel resisted, threatening to splinter rather than yield. It wasn't his property to damage. Defeated, he stood alone in the quiet room, the silence pressing in, his nerves frayed by the remembered sounds. That evening, near 11, the sound returned, bolder now, a measured thump, 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 pause, thump, thump, thump. Louder than the taps, more resonant than the earlier thud, like insistent knuckles. Elias felt his pulse leap, heat flushing his face, a tremor starting in his legs. He moved to the door, hand resting on the cool metal of the knob as the rhythm continued, gentle yet undeniably firm. Sweat trickled down his back. In a single decisive movement, he flung the door wide, flashlight beam stabbing into the void. Only bare wood met his gaze. He stepped back but left the door ajar. A heavy silence descended, thick and expectant. The air remained neutral, neither cold nor warm. He stood there for a long minute, listening to the frantic tempo of his own breathing. Finally, he reached inside, rapping his own knuckles against the wood. Silence answered. He tapped again, harder. Nothing. He left the closet agape that night, a silent challenge. Elias lay rigid in the dark, his gaze fixed on the shadowed rectangle, senses straining for any sound, any movement. Every random shadow in the periphery seemed poised to shift. Hours crawled by in hypervigilant wakefulness. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him. Morning light found the closet still open, still silent. His final month within those walls stretched into an eternity of apprehension. Each evening, homecoming felt like entering occupied territory. He'd heat solitary meals in the microwave, the hum unnervingly loud in the quiet house, and watch television with one ear perpetually cocked towards the upper floor. He jumped at every clang of the plumbing, convinced it originated from the closet. He took to sleeping with a small lamp burning, pushing back the deepest shadows. Earplugs were intolerable. The thought of being deaf to his surroundings was worse than the noise itself, and the knocks never truly ceased. Some nights they were faint whispers, others bold pronouncements. Once they woke him around 4 a.m., leaving him staring at the ceiling, sleep irrevocably shattered, until dawn painted the window gray. Near the end, his landlord called. Another tenant was interested. Elias could vacate early if desired. He offered no resistance. Boxes were packed, friends summoned, the meager contents of his life loaded into a small truck. His last night unfolded in a hollowed-out bedroom. Elias cocooned in a sleeping bag on the bare floor. The closet stood empty now, documents and suitcases already gone. Perhaps, he thought, with nothing left inside, the sounds would finally stop. Then, near midnight, a final soft percussion echoed from the empty closet. Tap! It resonated strangely in the bare room. His heart gave a familiar, painful lurch, but he didn't rise. He simply lay there, staring at the closed door for a long time. Morning arrived, cool and gray. Elias deposited the keys on the kitchen counter. He ascended the stairs one last time, peering into the vacant bedroom. The closet door was shut. The house held its breath, utterly silent. Unease lingered, a cold residue, but it was overlaid with profound relief. He locked the door behind him and drove away, putting distance between himself and the townhouse. His new apartment, smaller and situated in a different neighborhood, remains blessedly silent. He has a plain bedroom, a functional kitchen, and crucially, no deep built-in closets harboring old secrets. The knocking has not followed him, yet sometimes in the deepest hours of the night, the memory surfaces. The rhythmic tapping, the inexplicable chill, the taut strain in his chest as he stood before that wooden door. He possesses no answers, only the stark recollection of sound and sensation. He is simply grateful not to live there anymore. That unsettling chapter is closed, and he has no desire whatsoever to revisit it. The silence wasn't empty. It was thick, tasting of mildew and decaying paper. Then, a Thursday morning curdled it. Bent low over brittle enrollment ledgers in that subterranean passage, seeking ghosts of data from pre-digital epochs, I felt it. Less a sound, more a disturbance of the air beside my ear. A phantom exhalation, every nerve ending prickled. I pivoted, heart leaping against ribs. Only the skeletal ranks of steel shelving marched into the gloom, presided over by stuttering fluorescent tubes. Nothing. A trick of acoustics, I reasoned, forcing my shoulders down. Thus began the haunting. 3 years tethered me to this edifice, a handler of administrative minutiae, a purveyor of archaic research materials for the faculty above. Upstairs pulsed with life, student migrations, elevator chatter, the electric thrum of the present. But below ground, in the sub-basement's gullet, time stagnated. A repository for the forgotten, fossilized files, spectral equipment, volumes shedding brittle pages like dead skin. The light, perpetually anemic, the walls, the color of resignation. The air, a cocktail of aged paper and chemical ghosts. Initially, I shunned its depths. Then duty beckoned, demanding communion with archived histories, old examination results, demographic data lost to silicon memory. I acclimatized to the pinched corridors, the drone of unseen machinery, mapping the geography of dust and spider silk. Not welcoming, no, but functional. a vacuum where thought could crystallize, undisturbed. But the quiet began to fray. Furtive rustlings like cloth brushing against concrete just beyond sight. A soft concussion. The ghost of a dropped ledger behind the next row of shelves. My calls? Anyone there? Need a hand? Dissolved into the waiting quiet. No reply ever came. Investigations yielded only empty aisles beneath buzzing tubes. The building's old bones groaning, I told myself. Ventilation sighs. Such antiquated structures possess their own peculiar dialects. Yet the occurrences multiplied, gnawing at the edges of my logic. One afternoon, immersed in the faded ink of 90s transcripts, the overhead fluorescent gave its customary spasm. In that strobe-like flicker, a peripheral smear of motion, a darkness sliding low across the concrete floor near the aisle's corner. My head snapped up. Nothing but dust motes dancing in the sickly light, yet gooseflesh erupted along my arms, a sudden plunge in the ambient chill. My pulse hammered a frantic tattoo against my ears. Just the dimness deceiving the eye, surely. A week hence, the violation became intimate. My name, or rather a sibilant fragment of it, drawn out like taffy, breathed low and close. I whirled, a choked gasp escaping me. Empty. The corridor stretched vacant in both directions. Behind a looming metal cabinet, only shadows gathered. Cold perspiration slicked my palms. A band tightened around my chest. My thoughts scrambled for purchase. A prank by unseen colleagues? But the sheer stealth of it felt wrong, malicious. I retreated from the depths that day, profoundly disquieted. Sleep offered little refuge. The spectral syllable echoed in the dark. The following day unfolded in mundane rhythms. Filings, emails, charts printed for a professor, until the inevitable summons around 3. Personnel files interred in the sub-basement. Reluctance coiled in my gut. I armed myself with the torch. The afternoon light down there often failed entirely. Descending felt like submersion. In and out, I commanded myself, breathing shallowly. I navigated the aisles, scanning labels that blurred past. Locating the correct bay, I reached for a folder atop the highest shelf. At that instant, the light above didn't just flicker, it died. Plunged into absolute black, I felt it again. A distinct, warm puff of air against my cheek, intimate as a secret. My heart seized. Then, light flared back on. I recoiled violently, stumbling back, the torch tumbling from my spasming fingers to clang against the concrete. Retrieving it, my hand shook uncontrollably. I'm no shrinking violet. Lonely vigils in other campus haunts never rattled me. But this breath, it possessed a tangible reality, a phantom warmth. My pulse thundered, my throat constricted. A frantic scan revealed only the familiar emptiness, the drone of the building's hidden lungs. Mechanically, I retrieved the necessary papers, clutching them like a shield, and beat a retreat. Every step towards the stairs was shadowed by an intense prickling at my nape, the psychic weight of unseen proximity. The urge to confide, to seek validation or intervention from administration, warred with acute self-consciousness. What proof existed? Flickering bulbs? A feeling? Sounds easily dismissed as pipes or drafts. The specter of being labeled unstable, unreliable, held me silent. Months crawled by, each punctuated by increasingly frequent auditory intrusions. Sometimes a low, indistinct mumbling, as if from behind the very shelves I faced. Other times, a clearer, half-articulated syllable breathed just over my shoulder, dissolving the instant I spun, torch beam slicing empty air. My nerves frayed thin. A cold sweat would bead my brow the moment I started the descent. I began manufacturing delays, deflecting archival requests, praying for forgetfulness from faculty. A dereliction, I knew, anxiety sabotaging duty, but the sub-basement itself felt malignant now. The passages seemed to constrict. The lights grew dimmer, faster. The usual mustiness was sometimes overlaid with a sharper, cloying odor. Wet wool, perhaps, or something else damp and decaying. My breath hitched at the bottom step. Every muscle coiled, braced for the next whisper, the next flicker from the corner of my eye. Perhaps 6 months into this haunting, a new sound emerged. Footsteps. Not hurried, but measured, deliberate, echoing from the labyrinth's far reaches. Is someone down here? My own voice sounded reedy, pathetic in the stillness. Silence answered, yet the tread continued. Tap, 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 drawing me onward. I rounded a corner into a long, straight corridor terminating at a locked storage room. The sound emanated from that dead end. I advanced cautiously, my own steps loud on the worn concrete, hands icy despite the clammy air. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat audible in my ears. As I reached the door, the footsteps ceased abruptly. The handle confirmed the lock. Ear pressed to the cool metal, I strained to hear. Nothing. Behind me, the corridor yawned empty. The bulb overhead pulsed twice, then steadied. Empty, I muttered, the word tasting like ash. But the sensation of being observed, scrutinized, was overwhelming. I fled, stumbling on the stairs in my haste. Later that day, desperate for grounding, I broached the subject obliquely with Liam, a colleague. Ever hear odd noises down there? I kept my tone casual. He shrugged. Just the pipe settling, I guess. It's ancient. Nothing like whispers? Or someone moving around when no one's there? He gave me a quizzical look, a faint smile playing on his lips. Nah, sounds like you're stressed, mate. His easy dismissal was a cold splash. Paranoid. That's how it sounded. I let it go. Weeks later, a tedious assignment. Cull a mountain of derelict textbooks from a forgotten corner of the sub-basement. Catalog or condemn. A full day immersed in dust and decaying bindings. By late afternoon, fatigue had settled deep in my bones. My focus blurred. Then, the whisper returned, insidious, seeming to originate from behind a barricade of cartons. I fought to ignore it, hands trembling slightly as I sorted. It came again, sharper this time, coalescing into something chillingly close to my own name. I straightened, legs unsteady, nausea churning. Tentatively, I moved towards the boxes. The obligatory flicker overhead. Then a distinct, soft scrape. Like cardboard dragged across concrete, I peered around the stack. Emptiness greeted me. My breath hitched, vision swimming momentarily. Calm down, I commanded silently, eyes shut tight. And then, unmistakable, intimate, directly behind my head, a soft, sighing exhalation. I spun, the book nearly flying from my grasp. Only a looming metal shelf laden with forgotten lore stood sentinel. That was the fracture point. I bolted, leaving the texts in disarray, scrambling up the stairs towards the light and noise of the living world. Liam saw my face as I burst onto the main floor. All right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I could only manage a nod, mumbling about needing air, before seeking refuge in the stark anonymity of the restroom, splashing cold water on a face that felt bloodless, my heart refusing to slow its frantic rhythm. Something was fundamentally wrong down there. Avoidance became my primary strategy. Archival requests met with procrastination. Fetch quests required flimsy excuses or reluctant, short-lived companions dragged along as buffers, companions who never lingered, leaving me inevitably alone again in the oppressive quiet. Telling the administration remained unthinkable. How to articulate whispers and phantom breath in a locked, empty vault without sounding unhinged. One part of me craved an official investigation. Plumbers, electricians, anyone to find a rational source, faulty wiring, acoustic quirks. Another part recoiled, fearing an inspection that yielded nothing, cementing my status as delusional in the eyes of my superiors. So I existed in limbo, trapped between professional obligation and primal fear. Quitting wasn't feasible, yet denial was impossible. Terror was a constant companion on those rare, unavoidable descents. My mind cycles endlessly through explanations. The building's ancient respiration system, sonic illusions born of silence and suggestion. Could someone be infiltrating the space? Yet thorough checks revealed no breach, no footprint, no sign of human passage. The thought of recording audio on my phone surfaces frequently, objective proof perhaps for my own sanity. But the prospect of capturing an actual disembodied whisper on playback, that confirmation terrifies me more than the uncertainty. So I persist, a study in forced efficiency. When duty mandates dissent, I move with unnatural speed, snatch the required item, flee towards the stairs. I train my gaze forward, refusing to acknowledge the peripheral flickers, the sudden pockets of cold, the persistent static prickle at my neck that screams, proximity. Sometimes a dry rustling noise surfaces, like desiccated leaves stirred by a non-existent breeze, or a low guttural sound that fails to resolve into language. Is it communication, random echo, benign presence, or latent threat? The ambiguity is a slow poison. Each ascent brings a wave of clammy relief, legs trembling, shirt plastered to my back. I keep the secret locked tight. Filing a formal complaint, anomalous acoustic phenomena in sub-level archives, feels ludicrous, an invitation to dismissal. So I offer only casual remarks to colleagues about the basement's creep factor, its mustiness. They nod, agree it's unpleasant, but their eyes hold no flicker of shared recognition. My strategy remains one of willful ignorance. Ignore the whispers, suppress the fear, cling to rationalizations about architecture and acoustics. Yet, beneath the surface, a certainty festers. It is not just the building. I feel it coil in the stale air each time I cross the threshold. How much longer can this fragile truce hold? The next whisper, the next brush of unseen breath, will it finally shatter my composure? Will I confess, flee, or simply break? The decision hangs suspended, but the pressure mounts daily. Something is drawing nearer in the darkness beneath the humming lights, and I dread the moment it finally makes itself known. The twin beams of my battered sedan trembled, painting fugitive streaks of light across the void of the highway, unfurling into forever. My knuckles were white where they clamped the wheel, a silent plea for the machine to endure. Just a handful more miles, the thought echoed. But destiny, it seemed, favored disruption. With a choked gasp and a metallic sigh, the engine, my steadfast partner through 5 years of asphalt journeys, expired. Momentum bled away, depositing me onto the gravel shoulder as profound darkness rushed in, a velvet cloak smothering the world. "Not now, please, not now," I whispered, twisting the ignition key with futile urgency. A strained whine answered, a mechanical refusal. Defeated, I sagged against the worn fabric of the driver's seat, the stark truth of my predicament settling like cold sediment. Ilara Vance, 28 years navigating life, now marooned on an anonymous ribbon of Route 41. The dashboard clock glowing a mocking 11:43 p.m. My fingers scrambled for the phone, that sleek portal to salvation. Its screen offered scant comfort. A single hesitant bar of signal wavered, threatening extinction. Still, I tapped the emergency digits, a prayer caught in my throat. 911, state your emergency. A voice, thin and fractured by static, pierced the silence. My car. It stalled on Highway 41, I began, wrestling to keep the tremor from my tone. It's pitch black out here. I'm alone. Can someone come? Your precise location, ma'am. I peered into the impenetrable night, searching for any discernible shape, any landmark in the featureless expanse. I can't be certain. I passed a sign for Millbrook, maybe 20 minutes back. Understood. Dispatching a unit to patrol that sector. It may be some time. Are you able to remain with your vehicle? Yes, I confirmed, my throat parched. Any idea how long? Given the remoteness, potentially up to an hour. Is there anyone nearby you could contact to wait with you? The image of my vacant apartment rose, a stark reminder of the connections severed by my recent relocation for work. No, I admitted softly. There's no one. The call ended, leaving a silence heavier than before, pressing in with the weight of utter solitude. Occasionally, the distant whoosh of traffic on the opposing lanes served only to magnify my isolation on this deserted side. I lowered the window an inch, admitting a draft of cool, damp air. The night pulsed with the frantic chirr of crickets and the dry rustle of unseen grasses beside the road, an unsettling symphony for my lonely vigil. Then a glint in the rearview mirror, approaching headlights swelling from pinpricks to orbs, a surge of hope. Perhaps the patrol car arriving ahead of schedule. The vehicle decelerated as it drew near, its high beams forcing me to squint. Not law enforcement. An old hulking pickup truck. It crept past, its speed unnervingly slow, windows darkly tinted, obscuring the driver. A prickle of disquiet traced its way down my spine. Just being cautious, I reasoned aloud, the words sounding flimsy in the stillness, maybe seeing if I need assistance. But the truck didn't pause. It lumbered on, its twin red taillights receding until swallowed by the night. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding captive. Minutes crawled with excruciating languor. My attention oscillated between the useless phone screen and the empty stretch of road behind me, scanning for the promised flashing lights. Headlights reappeared in the mirror. My pulse leaped, then plummeted as the familiar silhouette of the pickup truck resolved itself from the darkness. It was returning. As before, it slowed, gliding closer. This time, however, it eased to a complete halt, perhaps 50 feet behind my disabled car. Its headlights remained fiercely lit, pinning my sedan in their stark, unblinking glare. I froze, hands tightening into fists in my lap. Why this hesitation? Why not pull alongside? Why just sit there? Seconds distended, stretching into an unbearable minute, then two. The truck remained immobile, no sign of movement within its cab, just those relentless beams fixing me like a specimen. My breathing grew shallow, rapid. Should I risk getting out? Make a gesture? The locked doors suddenly felt less like protection, more like the confines of a cage. After an age measured in heartbeats, the truck's engine growled. It swung out, tracing a wide arc around my vehicle. In the fleeting moment it passed alongside, I glimpsed the driver, a shadowed form, head angled distinctly towards me. No features were discernible. Then it accelerated, vanishing ahead, plunging me back into profound darkness. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in my ears. It's fine, just fine, I stammered, the forced reassurance loud and jarring in the enclosed space. Just checking, twice. without actually stopping to ask. Perfectly normal. A nervous laugh escaped, brittle and strange. My watch confirmed only 20 minutes had elapsed since the 911 call. It felt like a lifetime. Seeking distraction, I rummaged through my handbag, discarded gum wrappers, the jingle of loose coins, a crumpled tissue packet. My fingers brushed against something cool, metallic. The canister of pepper spray my father had insisted I keep. I retrieved it, its weight a small, cold comfort in my palm. A new sound infiltrated the night, a low, persistent thrum. I looked up, hope and dread churning within me. Headlights. Again. Not the patrol car, the pickup. It rolled up directly behind me this time, so close its grille filled my rearview mirror, its license plate invisible. The intense beams flooded the cabin, blinding me. Squinting, I tried to pierce the glare but saw only a dark mass behind the wheel. My grip tightened on the pepper spray. What was the purpose of this? This silent, unnerving presence? The driver's side door of the truck creaked open. I held my breath, every muscle taut. A boot appeared on the running board, followed by a denim-clad leg. The driver was emerging. My hand trembled as I snatched at my phone. No signal. The fragile bar had vanished entirely. The figure stepped fully into view. Tall, broad-shouldered, undeniably male. He paused for a moment, silhouetted against his own headlights, then began walking towards my car. My thoughts scattered like startled birds. Attempt escape? The engine was lifeless but maybe coasting. Impossible on this flat stretch. I'd never gain momentum. He was halfway there now. I couldn't discern his expression. Couldn't tell if his gaze was fixed on me. Yet I felt his approach like a physical pressure. 10 feet. 5. He stopped directly beside my window. I clutched the pepper spray, thumb hovering over the trigger. My other hand hovered near the horn. Any sudden move, any threat, and I would unleash the spray and lay on the horn. Someone would hear. Someone must. We existed in a frozen tableau. Myself rigid inside, him looming large outside. I braced for him to speak, to rattle the door handle, to act. Instead, he simply stood there, observing, waiting. A single drop of sweat traced a chilling path down my spine. Then deliberately he lifted a hand. I flinched, ready. He knocked 2 sharp raps against the glass. "Everything all right in there, miss?" His voice, unexpectedly ordinary, was deep and weathered, lacking overt menace. I blinked, disorientation washing over me. Yes, I stammered, projecting my voice through the window. "Car trouble. Waiting for assistance." He nodded, taking a slight step back. With the blinding glare slightly offset, I could see him more clearly. Older, perhaps 60-something, his face etched with lines, a worn cap pulled low. "Saw you sitting here before," he stated. "Came back around. Wanted to be sure you were okay. Can be risky, stranded out here by yourself." The adrenaline that had electrified my veins began to recede, leaving behind a faint sense of foolishness. A concerned passerby, nothing more. My imagination had spun wild tales in the dark. "Thank you," I offered, managing a tremulous smile. "I appreciate you checking. The police should be arriving shortly." He nodded again. Good. "Well, reckon I'll just wait nearby till they show, if you don't mind. Wouldn't feel right leaving you alone." Before I could formulate a reply, another pair of headlights materialized on the horizon. As they approached, the reassuring flash of a patrol car's light bar became visible. The old man turned, observed their arrival, then glanced back at me. "Looks like your help's here. You take care now, miss." He ambled back to his truck. Just as the patrol car pulled over and an officer emerged, the pickup truck rumbled away, melting back into the night. I lowered my window as the officer approached. "Ilara Vance?" he inquired. "Yes," I breathed, relief flooding through me like a warm tide. "Thank you so much for coming." While Officer Quinn radioed for a tow truck, my gaze drifted towards the direction the pickup had vanished. Had my fear been an overreaction? Perhaps. Yet, recalling those drawn-out minutes of suffocating uncertainty, the truck's circling, relentless presence, a persistent tremor of unease remained. Ultimately, the old man's true intentions, simple concern or something darker, would remain unknowable. But the deserted highway, once just empty space, now held a chilling resonance it would never lose. Climbing into the relative safety of the patrol car to await the tow, I made a firm mental note. Get the sedan thoroughly inspected at the earliest opportunity. And perhaps, just perhaps, give serious reconsideration to that job offer back in the city. Suddenly, the prospect of gridlock seemed infinitely preferable to the echoing solitude of the open road. Even now, seated here with breath ragged in my throat, a phantom cold traces the nape of my neck. The very architecture of this inherited place, Aunt Maeve's final bequest, feels sentient, leaning close with secrets whispered in dust and silence. Weeks I've dwelled within these walls alone. Since Maeve passed and left this pile to me, her disinterested nephew. A dubious gift, this house, steeped in stillness, groaning under the weight of years. My initial thought, refurbish, sell, escape. No one else clamored for its shadowed rooms. But tonight the air itself prickles, thick with an unseen, watchful presence. I am frozen in the upstairs corridor near the attic's maw, listening. My mind reels back to the evening's discovery, that mask. Fashioned of pallid ceramic, its blankness disturbed only by the faintest ghost of brushwork near the eyes. I recall the moment my flesh met its surface. An inexplicable warmth bloomed beneath my fingers, and as they brushed the curve of its cheek, a current, electric and nauseating, shot up my arm, leaving my stomach clenched. I'd unearthed it from a decaying cardboard box, secreted behind a hulking wardrobe in the attic's gloom. That space reeked of rot and stagnant time. I ventured up merely to explore, hoping for salvageable heirlooms, perhaps clues to Maeve's sequestered life. Shoving aside strata of yellowed newsprint and brittle lace, I saw it. That pale face staring sightlessly skyward, half submerged in forgotten things. Why I retrieved it, I cannot precisely say. Curiosity's siren call, perhaps. It possessed the aura of a relic from some shadowed antique stall, crazed glaze, edges darkened by age or handling. Its stark simplicity, vacant ocular hollows, the barest suggestion of lips, held a profound disquiet. After that initial unnerving contact, I tried to dismiss the sensation. I brought the mask downstairs, affixed it to the living room wall. A touch of macabre character, I reasoned, amidst the house's other accumulated detritus. Yet, as evening deepened into night, a wrongness permeated the atmosphere. Each time my path led past the living room, I could have sworn the mask's expression subtly altered. No overt contortions, no leering grin or furious scowl, but infinitesimal shifts in the topography of its cracks. Near midnight, I found myself arrested before it. In the unlit room, lunar rays traced the delicate fractures spiderwebbing its surface. Did those lines truly coalesce into a twisted smile, too faint to be certain, too unsettling to ignore? My heart hammered against my ribs. Enough, I decided. My fingers sought purchase, attempting to lift it from its hook, but it clung stubbornly, fused to the wall. Unwilling to risk breakage or further fray my own nerves with sudden noise, I retreated upstairs, seeking the oblivion of sleep. Yet my mind remained agitated, buzzing with a dissonant energy. The instant I extinguished the bedside lamp, a sound drifted from below. A choked, scratchy laugh, muffled, as if strained through layers of dense cloth. I went utterly still, straining to hear more in the ensuing silence. Old plumbing, perhaps? A branch scraping siding in the wind? Rationalizations warred with the tightening knot of dread in my chest. The undeniable feeling of being observed. Sleep, when it finally claimed me, was a restless, unremembered turbulence. I surfaced sometime in the dead hours, 3, perhaps 4 in the morning, throat parched, pulse frantic. An ache throbbed in my neck. Fumbling, I ignited the lamp, blinking against the sudden glare. And then I saw it. The mask. Lying beside the bed on the floorboards, placed with an almost gentle precision. Bile rose in my throat. I knew with chilling certainty I had left it downstairs. No one else resided here. My fingers, trembling violently, reached towards the cool ceramic. The instant contact was made, my hand recoiled as if burned. Swallowing hard, I scrambled backward, pressing myself into the headboard. Sleepwalking? Had I descended in some fugue state and retrieved it? The thought slicked my skin with cold sweat. My gaze darted to the bedroom door. Locked, bolted from within. I distinctly remembered turning the key. Impossible. Too terrified to court sleep again, I remained sitting bolt upright, a sentinel besieged by silence. The quiet was absolute, amplifying the frantic pulse drumming in my ears. Below me, the mask lay face up, its network of cracks still composing that subtle, derisive smirk. For hours I watched it. It remained inert. Yet I felt it waiting, patient and aware. With the grudging arrival of dawn, sunlight lancing through the thin curtains, I mustered the resolve to handle it again. My hand shook as I carried its weight back down the stairs. The living room presented its usual tableau. Tired furniture, a musty rug, the persistent odor of damp wood. I placed the mask upon the coffee table and sat opposite, examining it in the pale morning light. The cracks seemed more pronounced now, tracing intricate, almost deliberate patterns around the eye holes. Staring long enough, I began to perceive a glimmer of character behind the vacancy, as if the thing were appraising me in return. Answers. I needed them. I plundered Maeve's study, sifting through her paper ghosts, brittle letters, receipts bleeding ink, handwritten notes silent on the artifact's origins. Tucked within a drawer, a clutch of Polaroids, Maeve, younger, smiling beside strangers in dated attire. In the hazy background of one snapshot, a shape hung upon a wall, possibly the mask, or its twin. Another image captured a somber gathering around a large, ornate wooden chest, their expressions uniformly grim. The mask wasn't visible, yet an intuitive link resonated, unprovable but potent. I attempted to suppress the burgeoning anxiety. Lunch was sawdust in my mouth. Chewed mechanically, barely tasted. The mask remained on the coffee table, an unwelcome companion visible from the kitchen doorway, its silent scrutiny unnerving. I cleared my throat, half expecting the sound to be swallowed by the oppressive quiet. Nothing but stillness answered. As dusk began to bleed through the windows, the familiar tension coiled in my chest. I'd endured enough. Fetching a spare sheet from a linen closet, I draped it over the mask, extinguishing that eerie grin beneath the fabric. Out of sight, out of mind, I chanted inwardly. Perhaps tomorrow I could flee this place, find a buyer incurious about its history. Upstairs, I readied myself for another vigil. My limbs felt leaden. I tried to focus on a book, but my gaze kept straying to the doorway, anticipating a soft scrape, a stifled giggle. Eventually, I killed the lights. Darkness settled. My heart thumped a frantic rhythm against my ribs. For several minutes, blessed silence reigned. Just as a fragile hope for sleep began to dawn, I heard it again, that muffled laughter. I jolted upright, breath catching. It sounded closer this time, intimately near, just beyond the bedroom door. Flashlight in hand, I crept into the hallway, bare feet protesting on the creaking floorboards. Downstairs, the living room lay in shadow. The sheet I had used lay neatly folded on an armchair. And the mask? It hung once more upon the wall, though I had no memory of replacing it. Its cracks had deepened, fissures converging into a manic rictus. I trained the flashlight beam upon it, my hand shaking so violently the light danced. Then, impossibly, I saw the mask's surface ripple, a subtle tremor as if its ceramic skin were animate. I stumbled backward, colliding with a side table, sending a vase crashing to the floor with a muffled thud. Panic clawed at my throat. Breathe. Think. Bury it outside? Shatter it? No. A visceral instinct screamed that destruction offered no solution, might even provoke something worse. It wanted something. That desire emanated from it, palpable as heat. The mask yearned to be worn. The notion was grotesque, yet it adhered to my thoughts like pitch. If I yielded, donned that porcelain facade, what transformation awaited? Would Elias cease to exist behind that rictus grin? My palms grew slick. Reaching towards it, steeling myself to end this one way or another, my fingertips brushed the edge. A distinct pulse, like a faint heartbeat, thrummed through my hand. I gagged, snatching my hand back as if scalded. My knees buckled. The air thickened with the scent of burnt dust and decaying paper. I fled to the kitchen, desperate. Call someone? Who would credit such a tale? The phone line hissed with static. I slammed the receiver down, defeated. My breath came in harsh, ragged bursts. The house felt altered now, the temperature plummeting. In the microwave's dark glass, my reflection stared back, pale, eyes wide with stark terror. And behind my reflected image, I saw it, the mask, peering from the hallway entrance. Its grin stretched wider, cracking audibly now. Tiny ceramic flakes drifted down like bone dust. My throat constricted. I spun around. The hallway was empty. Turning back to the reflection, it was there again, closer this time. A cruel game. My stomach churned. This had to stop. Stealthily, I returned to the living room. The mask hung placidly, blank and inanimate beneath the dim lamplight. I stood directly beneath it, sweat tracing cold paths down my temples. Reaching up, I pressed my fingertips against its surface. The crazed lines felt like cicatrized wounds. Slowly, carefully, I lifted the mask from its hook. My entire body quaked, threatening to betray my grip. For one terrifying moment, I contemplated putting it on just to appease it, to see if the torment would cease. But the thought of that cold ceramic enclosing my face tightened my chest like a vice. Instead, I rewrapped it in the sheet, bundled it into the cardboard box, dragged the box to the hallway closet, slammed the door, and turned the key in the lock. A flimsy defense, I knew, but I needed respite, a moment to regroup. Back in the perceived safety of the upstairs, I tried to regain composure. My heart refused to settle. My throat felt raw. Splashing water on my face in the bathroom, I met my own gaze in the mirror. My eyes looked wrong, unfamiliar. The skin around them seemed taut, pulled by invisible threads. For a fleeting second, I swore I saw faint hairline cracks etched near my temples, delicate as spider silk. I touched the spot. They vanished. Imagination. Stress. Returning to the bedroom, I locked the door, then shoved the heavy dresser against it for good measure. Outside, the wind rose, rattling a branch against the window pane like skeletal fingers tapping. I fought thoughts of muffled laughter, of shifting smiles in porcelain. Exhausted, I collapsed onto the bed. But as my eyes drifted shut, a faint scraping sound emanated from within the room. My throat seized. I snapped the lamp back on. Nothing. My gaze fell to the floor beside my bed, and I froze. A tiny chip of ceramic lay there, a fragment of the mask's glaze gleaming dully in the lamplight. With trembling fingers, I picked it up. How? How had it escaped the locked closet, the sealed box? My reflection in the dark window pane caught my attention, and I saw it, the ghost of a grin playing across my own mouth. A grin I wasn't consciously making. I tried to force my lips into a neutral line to frown, but my cheek muscles twitched, marionetted by unseen strings. I dropped the ceramic shard. It landed with a delicate click on the bare wood floor. What this portends, I cannot fully grasp. But as I sit here, ensnared within these decaying rooms, I know the mask is not finished. I feel its presence, a silent, insidious whisper just beyond the door, beyond the barricade. Tomorrow perhaps courage might find me, and I will leave. But tonight, as the air grows heavy and my own heart beats a frantic tattoo against my ribs, I sense it drawing nearer, pressing against the fragile boundary of myself. If I falter, if I yield, it will claim me. It will have me wear its face. And I fear with a certainty colder than the grave that I might never glimpse my own again.